everybody, Noah from Stage 3 here, and today I want to bring you a quick review of AWE's catback exhaust for the F-150. So this is their single side exit, which has kind of a dual tip on it, and it's installed on our 2021 F-150 EcoBoost V6. This is the 3.5 liter version of the EcoBoost. So all the sound clips and everything I'm going to talk about in this review is really going to be centered around that 3.5 Eco. So if you have a 2.7, it may be kind of similar, and this may give you an idea of what you're looking at. But if you have a 5 liter V8 truck and you want to hear some V8 sound clips, I'm going to link a separate video up above here in the corner where you can take a look at our review of AWE's dual exit system with the 5 liter V8, and that'll give you a better idea of that sound. So with all that out of the way, I want to kick things off with just a couple sound clips of this truck at idle and doing some takeoff at both low and high speed and give you an idea of what it sounds like at some different revs. So we'll put those sound clips in, and then I will meet back up with you guys and we'll talk about how this thing actually sounds and what it's like to live with in terms of daily driving. All right, folks, so now that you've heard some sound clips for yourself, one of the first things you'll probably notice is that the truck still sounds like a V6. It isn't ever going to sound like a V8, and that's just because of the design. It doesn't matter what kit you put on here. But what I think AWE does really well is they elevate the best sounds that you could get out of this 3.5 EcoBoost, and they kind of mitigate some of the worst sounding parts that you don't want to hear all the time. So one of the things I really like is on startup, I think the truck has a nice aggressive little rumble to it. On cold start, it's obviously a bit louder, but even once it idles down and the motor's warmed up, it's a nice little burble in the background that lets you know that the truck's running. And as it's idling, it's just kind of that quiet hum there where, you know, you get a little bit more presence from the vehicle, but it's not in your face, it's not super obnoxious, it's not gonna wake up your neighbors, and I think for most people, even if they're hauling their family around, it's not gonna be any sort of issue. Now, what most people are more concerned with isn't so much the startup or the idle, but it's how it sounds when you actually put your boot into it. So when you're heading up an on-ramp onto the freeway or taking off from a stoplight, I think that this kit has a really nice sound from around 1500 RPM to about 3 grand. That's kind of the lower RPM range, so to speak, of what a V6 is capable of, but that's actually where you tend to spend most of your time. So through that range, there's a nice throaty growl that sounds aggressive and, you know, has a pretty good presence to it, but it's not overdone and it doesn't hammer you in the face with sound. I really like the tone in the cab, and it's definitely a bit deeper than what you'd usually expect from an EcoBoost V6. But once you get past that 3 grand range, you definitely notice some more of the buzzy kind of V6 sounds. I don't know how else to say it, you know, just kind of the higher revving, less desirable notes. But because of the way the truck's designed, you really don't spend much time above 3 grand. Even if you're really putting your foot into it, the truck likes to shift before that point in most cases because it has 10 gears to move through. So in my experience, you're most of the time in the best rev range for the best sound at this exhaust. Now, with that being said, I personally don't want to hear an exhaust like this all the time, especially if I'm on a road trip or, you know, spending a lot of time in the vehicle, commuting back and forth to work or whatever it may be. And I think that's probably the case for most of you guys. So what I'm happy to report is that this kit knows how to shut up when it needs to, and there's not any drone. So that's not to say that it's dead silent, but to give you an example, if you're running about 50 or 55 miles an hour and the truck's sitting around 1,000 to 1,500 RPMs, and you turn off your climate control stuff, turn down the fan, you don't have the radio going, anything like that, it's a pretty nice, quiet little rumble in the background that doesn't sound much different than idle, but you can tell that the truck's, you know, on and moving. And you don't have to raise your voice to talk to the people next to you. It definitely doesn't grind on you mentally, and it's pretty easy to live with. And then as soon as you turn your climate control back on, take up the fan a little bit, or, you know, turn on the radio, connect your phone, whatever it may be, you'll almost immediately drown it out and you won't be able to hear the exhaust at all. I can not recommend it enough in that regard. I think it's probably one of the most user-friendly day-to-day types of kits that you could buy. But like I said, the benefit is that when you do want to put your foot into it and you do rev the truck up a bit, or you're taking off from a light, it just gives you a bit of a sense that there's a little more oomph there, you know? The motor's actually doing something and it's not just silently pulling you forward. I don't know that there's much more that I can say about the overall sound of the exhaust, but I'd recommend checking out AWE's channel if you want to hear some other clips or some of the other engine options with their kits on it. And like I said, I think it's a pretty safe bet if you have a 3.5 EcoBoost that you're going to like this system. Now, moving on from the sound, the one other thing I want to cover in this review is just the overall build quality and the installation process. And I'll put a link up above in the corner of the video again to our video where we installed this exhaust and an intake on this truck. So that'll kind of show you what it actually takes to put the kit on. But what I will say is that AWE does a great job of packaging their systems to where they don't ever really get damaged, and I've never had a kit show up with any issues. The tips are always in pristine condition, the finish isn't chipped or scuffed in any way, and then the actual pipes themselves that make up the kit and the muffler and everything else are typically packaged well enough that there aren't any dents or dings or anything that causes the flanges to be bent in to where they won't seat properly. So I've found that their kits are extremely easy to install, and the instructions they provide are pretty clear. So you really shouldn't have any issues with an exhaust like this. And I would say that for the price that they charge, you sure hope that the quality is that good. But I've been impressed that they maintain that quality through every kit that I've installed from them. And not even just with the F-150, but even on Ranger and Bronco and some other platforms, they just consistently get it right. That's one of the things that is nice to know. So if you are going to be installing one of these kits at home, it's something you can knock out in your driveway. You could do it at home with hand tools, and you don't have to have a lift or a big expensive shop to do it. So that stuff makes a huge difference, especially for those of you that are more DIY types. The last thing I'll touch on super briefly here is just the price of the exhaust, or basically the value that you get with a kit like this, because it does hit in the higher end of the price spectrum. Usually you'll see this system running around $1,100, and that can vary a bit depending if it's on sale or not, but it is fairly expensive, and that does put it in the range to compete with Ford Performance / Borla or Corsa, a lot of those nicer, higher end brands. And I think that it holds its own up there. This is still an excellent exhaust system. It's just going to be up to you guys to decide if that's the kind of money you want to spend on your truck for something that provides this kind of sound, or if you're fine just having a stock exhaust for free. So that value is a little different to every person, and I can't tell you whether it's a good deal, but I will say that generally with exhaust systems, you get what you pay for. Even though this is a little bit steep in terms of price, it is a really nice high quality system, and I think it has one of the best sounds you can get from this 3.5 liter EcoBoost. While there are cheaper kits available, you may not get quite the same quality out of it, and it may have a worse sound, which in the long run might not be worth the money that you save. Once again, I'll leave that up to you guys to decide for yourselves, but I figured it was at least worth mentioning. That's going to bring us to the end of this AWE exhaust review. So thank you guys for watching if you stuck this out to the end. And as always, if you're interested in finding out some more info on this exhaust, or you want to pick up one of these kits for yourself, I'll have some links down in the description below that'll shoot you over to our website. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.